One of my clients was stuck around the 40 client mark for about 7 months, and everything was working on the front end. The inquiries were coming, they were very consistent, yet the number of clients he was working with on a month-to-month basis realistically didn't change. And it led us to a counterintuitive discovery which netted an extra $150,000 worth of revenue into this client's business without gaining a single client. And it sounds mad to say that out loud, but we gained a lot of money purely by increasing how long people stayed with us. So in this video, I want to break down what we did. I want to go through the journey that we went through and share what we discovered, what we then changed, and the impact it made. Because if you are trying to grow your coaching business, this is one of the most important things you can focus on. It's completely changed my outlook, how I run my business, and how I advise others to run theirs as well. So just to get off, like this client, they started around 6 clients. They didn't have many people on their books. They're a busy PT, but the online space didn't seem popular in their market, and they didn't think they'd get anywhere. I mean, now we're over 100 clients, but this first phase of their business growth was really, really fascinating, because we then had to hybridize what they did. And to be honest, to get from 6 to 40 clients, it was the messaging in their content. We just changed how we communicated and how we positioned the online service versus the one-to-one. And then we analyzed the problems, and we just were very specific around those problems. So it was mainly content to get to the point where we had regular inquiries. And with this, the audience size was around 2,000 at the time. We've got over just under 4,000 now, but it's not a massive audience. It just took accurate messaging and a process here, which we're going to go into, which not only attracts people with the problems that you have, it gives them hope and encouragement and perspective that you can help them, which is massive, because that encourages people to inquire. So we mainly focused on content strategy and positioning to get to 40 clients. And in those days, coming out of COVID, the market was relatively young. There wasn't a massive abundance of online coaches, and there's a huge appetite for it. So you could get away with just focusing on the inquiry rate. How many clients you got this month? Cool. And we just diligently focused on the front end, and it grew, got to 40 clients, and we're fantastic, we're happy. And it's only when I noticed this client's eyes getting darker and heavier in between calls, he's getting more and more tired and slightly more frustrated. And when we looked at the actual client number, we analyzed it, and we realized that we haven't grown. We haven't actually gone anywhere net within half a year. The client thought they had, because they were getting loads of signups a month, but it turns out the same number were dropping off. But we didn't really notice because we're too busy in the marketing and the content and the service fulfillment. We weren't tracking too much. My sole attention was making sure this client was attracting clients. But it wasn't working. It wasn't actually yielding anything despite the increased energy output. And when we analyzed the lifetime of the client, we discovered his average client lifetime was around 2.8 months. And to be honest, it wasn't a shocking revelation, because they did 90-day packages. And that was one of the discoveries. And it started my hate relationship with 90-day offers, because what I've learned is they set the wrong expectation. Very bad messaging, and you set a deadline or a junction where people can leave your service, because 12 weeks is enough time for someone to get a result, but it's definitely not enough time for those lifestyle changes to become habitual, or for the mindset to shift to realize that this whole training and diet, it is a permanent thing. It's not an on-off switch. It's not something you jump into and jump out of. But when you do have a 90-day expectation or a 90-day window, and you are, like every other coach at the time was, trying to sell people on, look, just get them signed up on a short commitment, then upsell them on the inside. Every other mentor in the space was pushing this message. And we had the counterintuitive approach to go the exact opposite way. And the reason we had that approach is we did a back of the envelope calculation. And this was a very sort of defining moment for us, because when we discovered the client lifetime, we had a decision to make. We said, right, okay, well, there's 2 things we need to focus on when we're growing a coaching business. How many people coming through every month? How long do they stay? That tells you the health of a business and where it's going. So if the inquiry was the same, and the client lifetime was the same, we would have to work for, we'd have to get 287 clients a year to achieve our financial target. For this client, that was 12,000 a month. That's a lot of people. And when you look at that audience size, I'm not a massive component of views. It's not all about views. It's about precision of messaging to attract and extract people from the following. That being said, there comes a point where you will need more people, you'll need more eyeballs. And we'd have to probably spend more time before we get to that on the content, more output, more time in marketing, less time in coaching. And coaching was the most fulfilling part of the process for this coach, ironically. Who'd have thought? You love coaching, but you don't want to coach, you want to mentor, or you want to become a marketer. So anyway, they didn't want to go in that direction. They didn't want to become a front-end content creator and then hire people underneath them to kind of run a team or a business. They still want to be involved in the back end. So when you look to the fact that there's going to be more and more and more, like a bit of a diminishing return of the energy they're putting out and the time they're putting out to content, there will also be a point where we might have to do paid ads, where we might have to get people into the following. And that is obviously decreasing the margin we're getting and the profit for the client. So didn't look great, that horizon, considering how much effort was being put in now and how busy we felt. Conversely, if we changed the client lifetime and extended it, and I said, look, if we aim between 6 and 12 months, we pick 8. If we can get to 8 months as our target, we only have to work with 87 clients a year. And the good news for us is at the time, we were averaging this. If you looked at like how many inquiries we got on a weekly basis across the 52 weeks in the year, this was really achievable. This was kind of already in the bag. We just needed to shift our focus on extending the back end. So it was the single most productive moment we had that year because it completely shifted our alignment and where our attention went. We didn't fix this problem because it didn't need fixing. We needed to fix that problem. And at the time, it was not controversial, but counterintuitive because no one thought about that. Everyone was just so fixated upon getting inquiries because that's all it took to grow a business, right? Just get more people through the door. What are you worried about? Attract more clients, solve the problem, more leads, done. But, for us, we had a different idea because we didn't like that horizon. So we then analysed and we looked into the back end of like, okay, why were people dropping off? Look through the reasons. Was it ghosting? Did they have holidays? And we kind of calculated and worked out. We looked at the inquiry forms and we discovered like the pain points, the struggles, and that helped us scope a new type of messaging which we could put into the content because we didn't want to follow the path of like, okay, sell them in 90 days, upsell them on the back end. I wanted to go the complete opposite direction and say, how do we convince people to pay for more? How do we convince people to sign up for a longer commitment from the get-go? Because retention issues, you can start solving those before the client even works with you by setting a good expectation. So the 3, and it is 3, I was very pedantic of constraining our conversation pieces, our talking points, as fewer things as possible, because if you go too broad, you don't keep your finger on the pulse and you might attract someone for this problem and then they might start to switch off if we talk about this and this and this. And that was a core reason why the inquiry rose in the early days, get from 6 to 40 clients, is because we were very consistent around the messaging. And then we showed the process of, well, this is the process, because once you attract people with the problems your service is designed to solve, if you don't do anything after that, then there's no urgency to do anything with that information. There's no reason to kind of work with you, or there's no expectation. But if you show a process which looks unique, which looks different, and which draws their attention to a solution, a consistent solution, that makes them aware or explains why they haven't got a result in the past. It gives them an area to look at, and it gives them a potential reason why you are different. Or what if they focused on this thing, then they're most likely to get a result because they haven't executed that thing in the past. In this example, we focused heavily on the fact that most people start a diet, but they don't plan to exit one. And that's what we discovered, because most people try and lose weight. They can go on 8 diets a year, which is one every 6 weeks, and they give no conscious thought to leaving one. So the messaging was, you can start diets, but can you exit? It's not the diet, it's the process after. And then another part was, ethically, we don't do 12 weeks anymore. We just do 6-month minimum, because it takes that time to get your body out of the diet. So you not only lose the weight, but you keep hold of the results. This is why other PTs will happily let you go after that time period, because quite frankly, they want you to put the weight back on so you come back to them. You know, they've got no problem with charging you and getting you back to that. But quite frankly, we've worked with enough people now. We don't need more. We don't need that situation to happen. We'd rather just actually solve the problem for long term. It's not all about getting the results as quickly as possible. It's about getting results that last. So we have to look at how we pull your body out of the diet phase. So that was a big thing. Another thing was, like, you know, how many years have you spent out of shape or the shape you are? You know, some people can spend 2 years, 5 years, 10 or 20 years. Do you honestly think your body's gonna undo that and get used to it within the space of 12 weeks? It just takes time. And analysing the data on his retention, I observed that if people stay for 6 months, they're much more likely to stay for 12, because they understand, they appreciate this is an ongoing thing. They become aware, their expectations shift, and they're more ingrained. Plus, when you've got a better result and you feel like you're better at something, you're good at something, you enjoy it more, because if you feel you're great at it, naturally leads you to see and seek more fulfillment or enjoy that process more. So that was a big reason to, like, shift into the messaging for that. But that's what we put into content. We covered those points. We were very consistent. We showed the process. We actually introduced a framework as well. Obviously, we showed client results. We explained that. We kind of broke down some of the messaging in here. We kind of overlapped across all of those. But having a framework where there's different phases was crucial. This was inside of service, because this helped condition people and attract the right people with the right expectations. And then this gave them a reason to kind of stick around, because if you have different phases and different things in place, people are aware that they have things to look forward to. There's things coming up. And in this phase, they're going to look to boost metabolism. In this phase, they're going to reverse out. In this phase, they're going to turn up, they're going to add mass onto the glutes, or they're going to add mass onto the arms. So having these different phases or steps come up, it stopped people getting into that, well, if it's just more of the same, if I'm dieting and my check-in hasn't changed, my diet plan hasn't changed, I might just quit and do this myself. Because if there's no horizon, and it feels quite familiar and samey, a lot of people will just go, I'll just save myself some money and drop off. This is it. So if this is all it is, I'll leave. So a huge part of that process with coaching is, if you don't communicate this with clients, and you don't set that expectation and physically show them with a framework of service what's coming up. And I'm not talking about a spreadsheet. I'm not talking you showing a Google sheet where you're showing like loads of rows with like maintenance, and then fake bulk. That's not accurately showing a phase. You need to visually show a body change. You need to just present it well, so it looks like the flow and things are happening, or things are kind of coming forwards. And then this is like a very obvious fix, but we introduced a 6-month commit and save offer. We also did monthly rolling. Personally, monthly rolling is really good, because if your service is good enough, that's it. You get them up and you show the horizon. That's good enough. Whereas sometimes, if you want to incentivize, you can do 6 months. You can kind of offer reduced service, and then you can use payment splitters if you need to. So it's not an upfront payment. They can spread that. But to be honest, this didn't really impact it as much. There wasn't actually too much inconsistency between the people who started for 6 months staying for 6 months versus the people who are rolling, starting for rolling, if they came from his audience. And this is a key point, massive point to the content strategy, because we would have never earned this without understanding what actually happens when you're posting content. Because cause and effect, it takes time. When you make a change, it takes time and latency to notice the result or the repercussions of that. And this coach, we had to maintain focus, and I had to encourage them significantly to maintain course, because to get people signing up and asking for 6 months, which they did in the end, we did get people saying, I want the 6-month package because I do not want to look like this next year. I want to do this properly. It works, the conditioning works, but it took 4 months in order to get those people come through. Now, we didn't get any new followers. The audience practically didn't really grow, noticeable amounts. We didn't do any paid ads. These were the same people who were coming in, signing up for 90 days, ghosting us, wanting to go on holidays, saying they'd start afterwards and sign back up afterwards, but never would. The same audience that attracted those people attracted people who said, I will pay up front for the 6 months because I don't want to look like this. It's a fantastic example of how powerful the meshing in your content is, if you are consistent, because there are a lot of temptations within that 4-month window where people weren't really responding. They weren't resonating. And it felt like he's spending a lot of time working on the messaging, a lot of time building those new habits, a lot of time on the communication, a lot of time on the script work, a lot of time spent for no noticeable benefit. To shift the system took a lot of energy and to remove the inertia. Yet, for 4 months, we didn't really notice any change in expectation. Nothing. And a lot of people quit before they noticed the effect. And it's a huge lesson. Not only did I discover with this client that, client lifetime, and basically, this is a much more enjoyable way to grow a business. And it's not all about getting leads in. It is about the lifetime, because what you'll also find is with this, when you increase the lifetime, you get better results purely from the fact you have more time with the client. So the results, they ended up attracting more inquiries because there's a more significant change. And when you have more time with the client, 9 times out of 10, you foster better relationships. And with that, you get more referrals. So I actually think that client lifetime is more important than inquiry rate, because if you nail this, the inquiries through referrals, they will pretty much be sorted out. Obviously, there's stuff to do with the messaging in your content, and you can focus on inquiry rate. But right now, the way the market is right now, and how many coaches there are, and how established it is, client lifetime is the most important metric, without a shadow of a doubt. But we wouldn't have got there, and we wouldn't discover this if we gave up sort of within the first 4 months. And it's an important point, because so many of us, just with how often dopamine spiked and how noticeable or how quickly we want things, how urgent we want things. I mean, you order food and people get pissed off if it doesn't arrive within an hour, And it's just that immediate gratification culture, which is like more and more abundant now, that really affects this. And there is a universal law of latency. Things just sometimes take damn time, and the distraction to change whilst you're onto a good thing is incredibly tempting. But thank God we didn't, because they're significantly better off for not. And now we're in a situation where it's compounding. The content, we're still pushing that message, and people are signing up for long term. And this coach has established himself with higher authority, and they stood out in the space, and it's actually led in their favor, because whilst everyone else is pushing 90 days, that now looks dishonest. It looks untrustworthy. Whereas we are authentic in our approach, we explain the reasoning, and people, when we associate it with the pain points and we explain it away and we talk their reality back to them in more detail than they understand themselves, that resonance is what builds trust. But more importantly, that feeling understood, that's the thing which actually encourages someone to do something about it. And we're getting more inquiries now. So since we have been consistent in this approach, and we have found that this messaging regarding like exiting the diet, regarding the expectations, regarding not being the same weight this time next year, we found that really resonated. It just took time to notice the signal, but now it's leading to more results, because his content is more precise into singing to the pain points, singing to the problems, but also giving people hope that his system's different because now he looks different. And the irony was, it was just the opposite approach to what everyone else was doing at the time. Well, if your business isn't growing, you've got to look at these two factors, and you've got to appreciate, are you on this curve? And this is, to be honest, this is the nuance of it, because latency works both ways. You can either be on track to being on the right curve, where you're doing the right things, you just don't quit, don't give up here, essentially, which is what this client was very tempted to do. To be fair, they wanted to give up here, here, and here. But you could be here, and you could be on to the next greatest thing. You just have to pay attention, or you just have to be consistent. Or you could be here, or here. And you could be doing the wrong thing consistently, and you're not going to notice until it pays off. And this is the hard reality of it if you don't know fully what you're doing. And to be honest, it's why when I work one-to-one with clients, it obviously produces the best results, because working with 450 plus coaches now, I can spot quite accurately which curve you're on based on what your current habits are, what you're currently doing. And in fact, that's why I'm putting a free advice form in the description below, because not knowing which one you're on is infuriating. Quite frankly, you need to know. So if you're on this curve, you need to make track for that curve. Or if you know definitely you're on this curve, you just need to know not to stop. You need to know, you need to be, sometimes just being told and having that belief and confidence from an outside perspective of like, do that, that could be all you need to provide and put that next bit of energy into your content, that next bit of conviction, which then gets a client. And as soon as you get that positive feedback, that's all it takes to reinforce. But there is that blind faith period where every coach operates in, where you have to wait for the cause and effect for things to take, or the time taken to notice the signal back. So it's in the description below. Fill it out. If you give me some details, give me your Instagram as well. That'll be on the form. I'll have a look through, and whatever you're trying to work towards, I can look at what's currently in place, and I'll tell you honestly. And yeah, I'll probably just give you like a report, break down what I see. So you can use that if you want. But it's been a hell of a change for this client. And obviously this took us from 40 clients up to 80 quite quickly. And then refining the content again, we're now around 107. So that's a dramatic difference from 6. And it is a constant process of like refining what we do. But you'll find with many things, as you improve one thing, you'll hit another bottleneck. And then as you improve that, you hit another bottleneck. And that's business at the end of the day. And that is the sole fulfillment I get, is analyzing these, spotting them, and then breaking down the reasons for, and then trying it and having the insight and awareness to recognize, where are we? Where are we? What are we doing? Which curve are we on? And what do we need to do to make that change in a positive way forwards? Even if it's just a case of doing more of the same, or if it's a case of changing, like we did when we're stuck around that 40 client mark.